Up next, we're going to talk about markets and what's ahead in 2025. Joining the program is the co-founder and managing partner of Agriculture Economic Insights. That is David Widmar. Good to see you, sir.
Great to join you. Thanks for having me on today.
Let's talk about where the markets sit right now, in particular corn and soybean prices, not the prices that producers want to see. What's your take of the situation?
And also not the prices that we budgeted for, last spring as we were preparing for the 2024 growing season. Producers are unfortunately going to be grain producers especially going to be a tough spot as they wrap up 2024 and they start thinking about 2025. One piece of optimism is that those forward dated contracts do look a little bit better. They do have better prices today. So that could present itself some marketing opportunities for those who know their cost of production and are willing to, put some pricing in place to help put that 2025 crop into a spot where they might be able to make some progress towards those long-term financial goals that they have for their operation.
Let's talk about long-term. I guess we'll talk 2025 here in a second, maybe some goals as well. As you look out on the next year, currently the markets start to look at South America, what's happening down there. Forecast another big production year, which is not going to be great news for domestic grain prices. Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment. We've sort of left the growing season here, the North America crop. We're going to focus on the South American crop growing season. And that means we've taken a lot of the yield production uncertainty out of the U.S. crop. So that's an improvement. I guess we don't have as much uncertainty, so that's behind us. But there isn't wiggle room to see a dramatic change in commodity prices. We don't have the likelihood of a lower crop. Smaller crop is just diminishing right before our eyes. But now what we have to focus on is usage. If we can focus on usage, and there's a pretty big story that happened over the last year with an increase in corn export usage. On soybeans, we're watching for domestic crush. And so the domestic crush situation, the economics of crushing a soybean are pretty favorable at the moment. So the idea here is how do we work through our ending stock situation, particularly for soybeans? How do we work through that in a way that maybe positions us for some stronger prices heading into 2025? And that's going back to that futures markets that we talked about. If you look at the 2025 new crop prices, you're going to see a little bit better outlook. So we're waiting for usage to help us put us into a better position in 2025 and hopefully beyond.
If you've been tracking exports, I mean, you kind of referenced that for corn and beans both, but it seems like the export picture is improving a little bit right now. Could that mean a bump in prices, at least for a short term?
Well, we would hope, but that hasn't necessarily been reality. One of the things that we looked at is last year when we talked and we were meeting here, we were thinking about a 15% stocks use situation. Now that 23-24 marketing year is below 12%. How do we get that below? Well, we had an increase in exports. Unfortunately, that didn't mean higher prices over the last 12 months, but we have seen the increase in usage. So kind of step one, get more usage online, get those ending stocks work lower. And then step two, if everything works out well, then we might see higher prices down the road. We need that usage engine to be running strong, and we're just starting to see the early signs of it coming back to life. So that's step one. We'll wait to see how the rest of the story falls together.
Okay, 2025, what kind of headwinds in particular do you see in the first 2 quarters of the year?
So the first 2 quarters of the year, we got to, of course, sort through what the size of that U.S. South American crop is going to be. We also got to focus on the size of the U.S. crop. We have a big soybean ending stock situation. We've had a corn crop is in a better situation, but when we think about spring planted acres, it's going to be potentially a big swing to corn. So that could, of course, upheave the balance sheets for the 2025 marketing year. So we got to watch that as well. And of course, it's no surprise as we sit here today, there's a lot of red on that drought monitor map. We've seen some moisture, especially in the southern plains and throughout the corn belt, but how much moisture are we going to have going into that spring planting? That will be another key consideration. Of course, think about the macro economy. All eyes are going to be on what happens with the farm bill, what happens with potential ad hoc disaster payments, and what happens with interest rates and government spending more broadly.
Of course, we can't forget tariffs. A lot of the ag industry right now worried about what's going to happen with President-elect Trump and when it comes to tariffs.
The T word, yeah. So there's a lot of conversation around tariffs, and that's a hard one because you have to look at both sides of the coin. On the one hand, if we could, in a vacuum, put tariffs on the goods that are coming into this country, there are some ag products, particularly specialty crops, think about vegetables and fruits, that might benefit from having those imported products having a higher price. It could support those domestic prices. But ultimately, we also might need steel or equipment that could face higher tariffs, higher prices because of those tariffs. But ultimately, the real risk for a lot of us watching today and thinking about this is retaliatory tariffs. So we saw that in the trade war with China. China slapped pretty hefty tariffs on U.S. soybeans. That shifted their purchases to South America for a time being, and those are really difficult to, one, predict, two, anticipate, but also three, the situation to work through there is just really, really difficult. Even during that trade war with China, one of the lessons is that we were able to move those bushels through the supply chain, but it was at a lower price. You have to lower those farm level prices to get those bushels to parts of the world that they weren't naturally wanting to flow. And so that's one of the big challenges is we might be able to get the bushels, but the demand is not going to be there to support the prices.
Real quick, we talked about long-term goals. As you think about that, what do you mean by long-term? How far out should we be trying to strategize?
One of the things that producers can do to really set themselves up for long-term success is think about how they're going to measure success. If we measure success based on the price we can get for our corn or our schedule left at the end of the year, that can leave a lot to be desired. So what we encourage producers to do with their family and all their stakeholders is sit down and say, what are our goals? What are our long-term goals? What do we want to do? So maybe it's around working capital. Maybe it's about bringing another generation to the operation. If we can document and discuss those goals, that's going to be really great. And what that allows you to do is to make decisions in uncertainty that allow you to make progress towards those long-term goals. And that's why I think it's going to be really helpful. At the end of the year, step back and say, what were those goals that we had at the beginning of the year? Did I make progress towards those? Okay, was this a successful year or not? If you made progress, then you could probably say, yes, we made some success.